What do you do when two hot Android phones cross your desk? You do a dogfight, that's what. The HTC EVO 4G came out a year ago, and we're getting ready to have another launch tomorrow in the EVO line. The HTC EVO 3D coming out tomorrow, June 24th, for $200. And this is really the replacement to the original EVO device. 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor here, two cameras on the back rather, for 3D content, 5 megapixel cameras, 4.3-inch display, and more. And then you have this one on Verizon, the LG Revolution, one of Verizon's 4G devices, the third one to hit the market, and equally powerful in its own right. 4G is super fast on Verizon, then it has a 1 gigahertz single core processor, 5 megapixel camera on the back, and it's running Android 2.2. Now, which one of these is going to win in the dogfight? Is it the one that's more powerful, which is obviously the EVO 3D, or is it the one with the better 4G speeds, the LG Revolution? We're going to find out that and more in the dogfight, but first, special thanks to our guys at Best Buy. You know, they hook us up with a bunch of phones so we can give them to you in the One Paw Bandit game. When you go into Best Buy either tomorrow to buy this, or hey, sometime soon to buy this, you'll walk out working. They'll help you set up your email, your web, and more. So when you walk out, you have all these little icons down here at the bottom of the display. But enough of that, let's get into it. Dogfight, HTC EVO 3D, LG Revolution. Which one's the best? We'll find out. If you're an Android lover, well, not even if you're an Android lover, really, if you just want a smartphone, you have a ton of options to choose from right now. It's apparently the summer of smartphones because there are a ton of devices coming out, the G2X, the Sensation, the EVO 3D, the Revolution, the Droid Charge, the Thunderbolt, the Droid Bionic at some point, and more. I mean, the names are endless. I can't stop thinking of devices. A lot coming out this year, either already out or on its way. Now, two of these devices that are really highlighted in a lot of ways across the various carriers, the HTC EVO 3D, which comes out tomorrow, June 24th, for $199, and then the LG Revolution, which is, depending on where you buy it, you can find it for various prices. $249, I believe, is still the word at Verizon corporate stores, but I've seen it as cheap as $99 through some specialty third-party retailers and more. So, you know, both awesome Android devices. This one's a little bit better in the specs department. It has a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. It has a 4.3-inch display with 540 by 960 pixels. And when you look at this versus the original EVO, you can tell that the display, you know, it's a lot taller and narrower than the old EVO. The EVO is kind of bulky, kind of fat, if you will. The EVO 3D isn't that way. But anyway, it's a high-resolution QHD display, so they've upped the resolution as well and made it a QHD display. So its colors look great, and it's interesting when you look at this versus other QHD displays like what's found on the Droid X2, a lot less pixelation here as opposed to the Motorola device. So then you have the LG Revolution over here, 1 gigahertz. Well, actually, before I do that, let me go back to this one because I didn't cover all the specs. Dual 5 megapixel cameras on the back here. They're capable of recording 2D and 3D content. Now, it's important to note the press release said that in 2D you could shoot video at 1080p. That's not true. They came out a couple of days later and said that that was wrong. You can only shoot in 720p in both 2D and 3D. So anyway, dual 5 megapixel cameras there, and then a front-facing camera for video calling. Now, the cool thing about this comes with Android 2.3 out of the box. You're getting Gingerbread out of the box, and yes, they've already announced Ice Cream Sandwich, but still, it's nice to get, you know, at least the most up-to-date version that's available right now comes on this device. And then it comes with Sense 3.0, HTC's custom user interface, and that's the newest version of that as well. So you're really getting some up-to-date software on this device out of the box. And then to skip over to the LG Revolution here, 1 gigahertz single-core processor. So it's not running a dual-core, but still it's relatively fast in comparison to the other 4G devices in Verizon's lineup. Now, you know, obviously always take quadrant standard with a grain of salt, but quadrant standard scores on this device beat the Thunderbolt and the Droid Charge. So, you know, at least in terms of speed, this is one of the faster ones on Verizon. 5 megapixel camera on the back with 720p HD video recording capabilities and a flash as well. So you've got that. And then it's running Android 2.2. Now, this is one of LG's first smartphones. This and the G2X are the two that are out in the United States right now, the two high-end smartphones that are out in the United States. And this one, unlike the G2X, which is a stock build of Android 2.2, this is running Android 2.2 with LG's custom skin. You can see it's obviously not a stock build of Android 2.2, and it's a love-hate thing. I don't care for it. I think there, you know, some more work that could be done. It's not fully baked out, you know, and they're coming into this game a little bit late with kind of a version 1 platform when it, you know, whereas Sense is already well up into 3.0 and more. So you got these ones like TouchWiz that are already in version 4, Moto Blur, which has been out for some time, or not Moto Blur anymore, whatever you want to call it, and then you have Sense, and then you have this is just fresh to the market. So you know, I think there's some work that can be done on the Revolution. But anyway, you know, a good device in its own right, 4G capable here. This is 4G as well. I mean, I can't imagine them calling it the HTC EVO 3D 4G, but it is 4G capable. You can access Sprint's WiMAX. Now, not to spoil too much of the fun, and I can't show you anyway because reception's not the greatest on Sprint in my home office, but 4G connectivity, at least based on the 2500 megahertz spectrum that Sprint uses, 4G speeds when you're in a building or you're anywhere with walls, which I guess would be a building, but speed isn't the best as opposed to the Revolution. I mean, I'm seeing constantly 8 to 12 megabits per second on the download here. I see 4 to 6 usually over here, with it as slow as 2 megabits per second, and as fast, I've seen it a couple times at 7.5 megabits per second on the EVO 3D. So that's stuff to keep in mind. But anyway, I really want to focus on, first of all, the hardware, just to show you what they look like here on the sides. On the sides of the EVO 3D, you can see my favorite, a camera shortcut button, a 2D, 3D toggle, so you can switch back and forth between whichever content you want to shoot, a volume rocker, 3.5mm headphone jack up there, and your micro USB charging port over here. Now this power button, like I said in the review video, is pretty sensitive. You swipe your finger over it, and this may be my unit. I've seen some people that have commented on my video and said, hey, I got the EVO 3D today, or I've played with one, or whatever, and the power button isn't like that. So that's just mine. Take it with a grain of salt. Then you have the Revolution, a little bit thicker than some of the other 4G devices out there, and it's noticeably thick in the hand. So you got your volume rocker over here. You've got an HDMI out port here, which is really nice. And this comes with Netflix pre-installed, so if you get that HDMI cable, and let's say you're in a movie or a hotel room, you can stream Netflix to your TV in your hotel room, assuming the TV has an HDMI port. Micro USB charging port over here, 3.5mm headphone jack, power button, and that's it on the hardware front. Now let me turn these back on. And just to start, actually, I want to show you the lock screens because, like I said, this one's running HTC Sense version 3.0, which is an improvement over 2.0, and there are some changes. One of those over 2.0, which is what the Inspire 4G and the Thunderbolt run, the lock screen. You'll notice that the lock screen looks different. Gone is that typical HTC swipe down that you've seen on some of the past devices. This is the new lock screen. You either drag the circle up to anywhere on the screen to open it up, or you can access some of these quick icons here, which you can customize to whichever applications you use the most, and you can go from there. So let's say, I load up Gmail, for example. Once I click it and open it up, or let go of it in that circle, it'll open up Gmail and bring it right in to my mail. So you can see, I like that. The functionality is very nice. No such thing on this one just yet. You slide up to unlock this, but you can see the differences here. If you're used to Sense, there's not a huge change, at least in the overall functionality. There are some minor differences here. You can see the start bar, or the applications drawer here, and you can see a change here as opposed to older Sense devices. You can see that instead of going down line by line, like for example this does, where I'm scrolling down one line by one line, I can stop, and it stops me at that particular line. When I scroll down once, it scrolls down an entire page of applications, so you can see which page I'm on by this little corresponding scroll bar over here. But pretty easy to access, up and down, right there. So just a little bit different there. You'll notice at the bottom here, this was actually something that they showed off in Sense 2.1, which is what the Incredible 2 has, and some of the European devices that came out at Mobile World Congress. But you can scroll over here as well and see frequent and downloaded, and you can access your apps obviously by which ones you downloaded yourself, which ones you frequently use, and more. And then the notifications bar, a little bit different, still has those apps up at the top, your most recently used applications, which you can scroll back and forth between. But the big change to Sense 3.0, which I think this was in 2.1 as well, in fact I'm sure it was, the quick settings little button down here, little quick settings tab, where you can go over and jump to 4G or jump to Wi-Fi without having to go through the system settings. So a little bit easier there. Yes, the shortcuts aren't up at the top like you see on LG and on Samsung and some of the other ones, but still to have that quick access in the settings is very, very nice. Now something else HTC is doing on Sense 3.0, they're bundling their own task manager. So I can go to total memory here, I can go to HTC Task Manager, I can kill all those, and I can refresh. So no more need for Advanced Task Killer, any of those applications in Android market. They followed Samsung and some of the others, Motorola, and offered their own task manager there out of the gate. Now on this one, like I said, LG's custom user interface, a little bit different over here, and it kind of has this mixture of TouchWiz and iOS, kind of a look and feel to it. You can see that the icons are very bubbly, kind of very colorful, and you have 7 home screens, just like you do on Sense, but unlike the carousel animation that you see here, which is also new to Sense 3.0, this carousel animation and the pinch to zoom, this, there we go. Okay, so you can see pinch to zoom. 7 home screens on both of these, and then when you go into the apps, you can see that it groups the apps by communication, news and search, media, and other relevant things like that. Tools, applications and downloads. So it's going to be one of those love-hate things. You can list those out, obviously, if you want to, and you can list them out by alphabet, or list them out in alphabetical order, rather, or you can do it by category. And then you can manage the category if you want to as well and scroll up and down. So there's some reasonable level of customization there. But it's one of those things. You're going to pick an Android device. You may prefer Blur, you may prefer this, you may prefer Sense. It's going to be whichever one kind of tickles your fancy and you work the best with. But you can see pinching brings all those together where I can access specifically if I want to see news and search, for example. I can close that back out, go to Tools, close that back out. Now, something I've noticed on the Revolution, and I noticed this on the Optimus 3D, and I'm not sure if it's just an LG thing because I didn't notice it on the G2X, but I find the screen to be really unresponsive on this one and on the Optimus 3D. You can see, and of course when I show you it's not going to work, but if I'm scrolling up and I want to click on something, I find that it doesn't always register my gesture the first time I click. So you can see, messaging, I've clicked around it 3 times now, and then it finally just let me in. So I find that it's not as responsive as it could be, so that's something that may be a potential issue for a lot of people. Another thing here, and this I'll show you in comparison to Sense, bring up the personalization menu. When you press and hold on the screen, the new thing, this debuted in Sense 2.0, and it's in 3.0 as well, this personalization menu. You can personalize the lock screen, the wallpaper, the scenes, the skins, and more. Now on this one, when I press and hold, it brings up a customized page as well. It doesn't bring up that typical Android look, where down here I can access widgets, shortcuts, folders, and wallpapers, and do it all from here. So let's say I want to change that. I can change the wallpaper right now. Wallpaper changed. I can add widgets. Bam. And then when I'm done, I just hit back, and all that's done. The wallpaper's been changed. The widgets, the relevant widgets have been added to the home screen. So something a little bit different. That's kind of a nice touch. It's just, yeah, it's different. And then I think the implementation here is fantastic. Now the addition here that you don't see in Sense 2.0, the lock screen can be changed. Now you have several different lock screen options. You can just display the wallpaper, photo album, friend stream, the weather, stocks, or the clock. So let's say you're an avid stock buff. You can change it over to your stuff over here, your stocks, kind of a ticker all on the main screen, and then you can hit settings and you can assign an application to let's say I use Blockbuster a lot. I can assign Blockbuster, and then when I hit done and I go out, it brings up, still brings up the weather for some reason, but it brought up Blockbuster, as you can see there. I'm not sure why it didn't change. Let's just do stocks. There we go, stocks lock screen applied. May have been a user error. I don't have any stocks data on the device right now, but if I did, they'd all show up right there, and you can see my shortcuts, and I can easily bring those down into the circle, or I can drag it up just like that. So a lot of customization on both of these, but on the customizations front, Sense wins by a landslide for that, and also for the ability to access HTC Hub, which is kind of HTC's online store where you can access media, media, wallpapers, ringtones, themes, and more to download to your device for additional customization.